Welcome to day 20. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's just take a moment. Big deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. It's today, and then it's tomorrow. And then on the 22nd day, you get the whole playlist of all of the interviews. This has just been so juicy. I hope that y'all have been enjoying it as much as I enjoyed interviewing all of these phenomenal human beings. So today on day 20, we are going to be talking to Dr. Jorge Ferrer about going beyond the binary of monogamy and polyamory. So Dr. Jorge Ferrer is a clinical psychologist, author, and relationship counselor. He was a professor of psychology for more than 20 years at California Institute of Integral Studies, San Francisco, where he also served as chair of the Department of East-West Psychology. Among other books, Jorge is the author of Love and Freedom, Transcending Monogamy and Polyamory, published by Rowman and Littlefield in 2022. And his writings on alternative relationships have appeared in journals such as Sexuality and Culture and Psychology and Sexuality. Dr. Ferrer coined the term novogamy, i.e. relationship styles beyond mono, poly, binary, which was the focus of his 2022 TEDx talk, Free Your Love Beyond Monogamy and Polyamory, and was included in Springer's Encyclopedia of Sexual Psychology and Behavior in 2023. In his international private practice, he offers professional counseling to individuals and couples focused on the management of jealousy, infidelities, sexual incompatibilities, open relationships, and the design of more satisfying intimate relationships. Jorge was an advisor to the Religions for Peace at the United Nations. So I don't know if y'all are just like sitting on the edge of your seat, but I was sitting on the edge of my seat in this interview with this amazing human being. So please, please enjoy. All right. Welcome, welcome everyone. And Jorge, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be part of this project. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Just so happy that you said yes, and can't imagine this project without you this year. It's so perfect.
Wow. I think the project would survive without me, but I appreciate your words.
Yep, absolutely. And so what we're talking about today is this kind of intersection between polyamory and spirituality. But I think that what we've talked about, where we want to start, is like really your story. What is your story around this? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Okay. So I'll just say that I was like a late bird in matters of love and relationships. So I didn't have my first steady girlfriend until I was like almost 20 years old. Had some connections here and there, but not like a real relationship until I was like in my 20s, like 2021, something like that, or 1920. And I still remember walking with my girlfriend in the streets of Barcelona one Sunday morning. I had like this realization or like this download, like I realized like, well, I wonder like, why being in love and being loved by this wonderful woman like means that I cannot love or be loved by any other people in the world in the physical, intimate, or sensuous way. Given at that time there were like 5 billion people in the planet, now we are like 8 or 9 almost. So it struck me as kind of a delirium of cosmic proportions. It's like, why to be with someone means that we cannot really sense like this love with other people. And that took me into the exploration of what open relationships. But before that, also, I found myself like cheating, and I wasn't very proud of that. Into relationships, I was found myself cheating, and I started realizing, feeling guilty about it, and realized like, I just don't want to lie. I want to be open. You need to understand at that time in Barcelona, the word polyamory didn't exist. So I didn't have that word, I didn't have any reference. So what was helpful for me is that at some point I met a couple of psychotherapists and they were in an open relationship. And they strike me as very like emotionally mature, spiritually connected, and with them actually we entered like a relationship. He and I were in a primary relationship with her that lasted for 3 years. So my entry into open relationships and polyamory, so to speak, was very unconventional. I was like a really very spiritual with two highly evolved human beings, like really. And then I moved to California, to the Bay Area, to pursue my doctoral degree. And of course, in California, there was like a lot of this conversation already happening there in the early 90s. And I learned about the word polyamory. I met Deborah Anna Paul. I went to some of her gatherings and many other people. So I came out as a poly man. I lived open relationships for about 10 years. But then after that, I went through a period of celibacy myself, 3 years of asexual or romantic relationships, not even with myself. And then after that, I felt drawn to explore monogamy after all that trajectory. Maybe there's something in monogamy I should learn, I should grow there. And then I spent almost other 10 years in monogamous relationships. So my trajectory has been very unconventional in many different ways. But led me to the state that where I feel right now, that is what I call relational freedom, the ability to be one or the other, depending on who you are, where you are, depending on your developmental pools. And that's part of like my project when I write the books. It's about fostering relational freedom. I'm not really saying that polyamory or monogamy are better or worse. There is obviously higher and lower versions of both, as we know. But maybe I'll shut up for a moment and see where would you like to take it from here.
No, thank you for sharing your story. And I just appreciate your transparency with all of that, because I think that a lot of people who didn't know about open relationships or polyamory, like we did, start out with cheating because it was like, what else do? You don't really have a template for it. And it doesn't feel good. Like you don't want to do that necessarily, but you're just kind of like, I don't know what else is there for me to do? And that's this kind of like journey of having such a fortunate relationship with other people that had a little bit more development than you did, so that you could learn, than going to California. Anyway, I don't want to recap the whole thing, but I really appreciate this progression of your life, and also really appreciate that you were like open to monogamy. And it's so beautiful that you came to this space of relational freedom. And that's what I wanted to ask you about a little bit more, was like, what does relational freedom mean to you? This is the state that you came to. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Relational freedom means to me that we all have a lot of conditionings in our kind of intimate choices that we make. So the idea is like to really explore all those layers of conditioning. We have, of course, like evolutionary conditionings, like biological conditioning that are probably like really hardwired in us. And I believe that we have different dispositions, that some people are more poly, some people are more mono. So it's important to explore what are your natural dispositions. But in order to really get to know them, you need to go through other layers. Like the cultural conditioning, of course, like mononormativity is the greatest conditioning. But of course, also like today, in addition to mononormativity, there is also what I call poly-pride or polynormativity, that like some people start like feeling, wow, polyamory is the new kid in town, is the most evolved, is the most spiritual, this is the thing now. And you need to be like careful, because we can choose both either monogamy or polyamory for the right or the wrong reasons, from places of deficit, from places of like unhealthy attachment. Sure, Jessica will be talking about this in your interview with her. But he talks about polysecure, like that you can be secure attachment and choose polyamory, of course, but you can be secure attachment and choose monogamy. But also the other way around, like someone with a very kind of an insecure attachment. Of course, for some people, monogamy feels the only safe container, because otherwise it's like too traumatic or like too challenging. But also I've seen cases with some like poly people choose polyamory because they have abandonment anxiety. So if their primary partner leaves them, they know they have at least one or two other people on the reserve that they are going to go to them. So each case needs to be seen independently. And then also the other layer to explore that is also very interesting, I do that sometimes in my counseling practice, is to explore your love trajectory and also your childhood. What happened in your childhood in terms of with rivalries with people, that is brothers or siblings that are causing some jealousy and some blocks to be open in our relationships. What was happening in your house? Was jealousy like a big thing in your parents? For example, was your parent cheating on your mom, and now you are like against anything that may sound like cheating. Like for some people, polyamory is a kind of like cheating, although of course it's not. So I think it's important to explore all these layers. And I don't think we will ever be able to be fully relationally free. There is certain conditions that will be with us, but we can achieve greater degrees of freedom. And that in practice boils down that at some point, that's what happened to me. I felt I could be both monogamous or polyamorous without serious fears or conflicts, and fears will happen in intimate relationships because it's the nature, we're human. And even those of us who have like achieved tremendous freedom from jealousy, there could be like some situations that is like some tickles in our heart and kind of, and of course, as like Marie Fine, who also will be here with you in her wonderful research, compersion, the opposite of jealousy, can coexist with jealousy. You can be super happy that your partner is with someone and really celebrating. Your heart chakra doesn't contract, it's open. And still there could be some areas that like, and like shit under. So I think it's important to really be very self-compassionate, compassionate with ourselves, and also with our partners when also they have some challenges. Yeah, I would say that at the moment.
I love the layers that you talked about, because when I hear you talking about this, what I'm reminded of is that we aren't given the tools to be in healthy relationships. Most of us aren't, because we come from societies, cultures, families, backgrounds where we just haven't been given these skills or these points of view to look from, rather than more unhealthy points of view. And that kind of gets stacked on top of each other over time. So in order to be in healthy relationships, we do have to do that kind of unfolding of all of those things. And I think that in itself, like just to be aware of that specific thing, I think is so important. Because once you're aware of that, then you can actually start to explore that as you were talking about. And I really appreciate also that you saying you can't really achieve like relational freedom. It's more of just like, it's more of this kind of direction to go and like path to walk on, so to speak. And that kind of brings me back to one of the things that is the underlying factor of all of this, it seems, is that like spiritual piece, because of everything that you're talking about. Yes, it's very therapeutic. It's from this lens of like societal structures and concepts, etc. But there does seem to be in what you're talking about like this underlying source of spirituality. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Thanks for the question. For me, I'm also a transpersonal psychologist, a spiritual psychologist, so spirituality is very central to the work I do. And for me, from a psycho-spiritual perspective, I see an intimate relationship as a structure through which human beings will learn to express and receive embodied love, or love in all its forms, in all its frequencies. And also a structure that also helps us like to heal and to grow, a platform for healing and growth, and also to expand our sense of identity, because we are ourselves, mind, and suddenly you fall in love, and the happiness of your partner is more important than your own happiness when you're really, really in love with someone. In this sense, I feel like to explore the spiritual potential of polyamory, like you need to understand that on the one hand, that sense of expansion of your identity can go larger because you can be in love with more than one person. That sense of ours is not just two, could be three, or could be even more people. And that's really also takes a lot of like also greater emotional intelligence skills to really manage a lot of things on the one hand. And also like the importance here of like, I do really defend what I call the right to love. The right to love any number of people you want, could be one or could be many, in whatever ways everybody consent, insofar, of course, if there is like not, it's constructive, it's growthful, and it's not harmful in destructive ways. And so forth. So I think that's really important. And then, of course, the other big piece that I'm sure you'll be also talking with Marie is like the transformation of jealousy, like the green-eyed monster. Shakespeare talked about jealousy as the green-eyed monster. And jealousy is like a source of a lot of violence, a lot of like women's control, it's really connected to patriarchal, but of course women can also be very jealous. So that transformation like into comparison, I think that's for me in my own trajectory where when it's pretty easy for almost everybody to have different lovers. But what is normally the challenge is when the person you love really a lot or the most, or you're fully in love, or wants to be with other people, that's like the real spiritual test of polyamory. Can you really let your heart really expand and celebrate that, knowing that something is really good for the person you love is going to be good for you and for the relationship. And that's where also there is a distortion that we discussed previously in another moment, like you and I see a lot of distortion in California, I see a lot of distortion in Spain, especially in men that use a spiritual rhetoric of love without limits and things like this. But ultimately, they are building on a harem of lovers. I saw some of these cases in California. I had a friend who had always, I'm polyamorous, had all these different lovers, but he would always tell me and other, but please don't go close to them, don't hit on them, don't. He was like super paranoid around that, And it's like, well, that's kind of a distortion because, and you're missing the spiritual potential here. Spiritual potential of really opening your heart into what is called comparison, or like to really liberating that kind of heart contraction that we name as jealousy.
Yeah, and thank you for naming that as well, because I think that is something that's like a big pain point of the polyamorous community at large. That starts with individuals who do behave like that, who do use the language of polyamory or spiritual rhetoric, as you're saying, and use it in ways that are not great or still controlling, or they're using the rhetoric as like spiritual bypassing, right?
Exactly.
And what can be I'm like, "Give us the answers, Jorge. What can be done?"
I think like polyamorous networks like super important, like that it is like the importance of community, the importance of the sangha, the importance of peer relationship. It's much more problematic when it is the case of like certain like kind of big psychotherapists or almost spiritual teachers or gurus that they promote polyamory or things like that, but they're in a position of power. They don't have like peers that question them. But I believe like on the ground level, so to speak, of relationships, like I think it's important that we all take the responsibility and to really mirror with compassion and love, but with firmness when we see those tendencies in our friends. And definitively, I would love, if someone see me doing that, I would love to be mirrored in that way. So that's an important piece. And of course, those people who are, as Elizabeth Sheff called, hegemonic masculinities, poly-hegemonic masculinities. I had that term for the poly men who are actually like building a harem of women. And so then it will be up to them, but if they want to change that or work on that. If they do want to work on that, of course, there's a kind of like deep psychological work, either with a psychotherapist that it like really knows about these issues and can support, or maybe other kind of like self-exploration as well. But I think the importance of the Sangha, the community, the networks of equals is fundamental in this conversation, in helping to alert people of these distortions. Because some of them, maybe they might not even be aware of what they're doing fully. Of course, some are aware.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is like the community accountability of that, and I would add in the compassionate holding up of mirrors to each
Yes.
other.
Beautiful.
Yeah, critical. Thank you. Because I also see people who, there's also the language of calling people in rather than calling people out, right?
Yes, great.
But the other part of it is that individual needs to have the willingness to look at that, to do the work, to introspect, to possibly go do psychotherapy or something like that. And what I'm hearing in that is that it does take that willingness and effort of the individual and the community to be able to work through something like that.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I remember that one case of a friend in California who was operating these ways. And what he was saying when he was introducing his new, well, I feel that she's going to be my primary partner and she's the one, and I really feel protected for the relationship. And for that could make sense, but when he did that 2, 3, 4, 5, every single time that he would bring with a new person, he would say that to all the males of his community so that they would be kind of like away. And I mostly was paranoid. I for one, I would have never thought about hitting on his girlfriends. That didn't even cross my mind ever. But for him was very over concerned about this. So yeah, exactly. I love what you say about calling out. It's not about like really like man, you're like fucked up, you're like doing this wrong. It's not about that. It's like listen, we're observing that every time that you bring a new person, you are like, seems to be over concerned about like other men, and maybe we can have this conversation. Is there any way we can make you feel safer? For example, is there any way that we can support you in not feeling this kind of insecurity or like concerns? Because that's why we're here, to support each other in this path.
Yeah. I had like 3 different thoughts.
Good.
And one of them was when someone, you bring this to someone, you bring this concern to someone, and you bring it out of love and compassion for them and for the community, and then they're like, "No, I'm not gonna look at that. I'm not gonna do anything about that," or "You're crazy," or "F you," or they have a negative response to that.
Yeah. Yes. So you're asking me what to do in those situations?
Yeah, what would be a course of action to do? Because the other thing that pops up for me is that I feel like there's a lot of cancel culture with people, especially like online, where it's just, oh, we're just gonna like shit all over this person, and then just so that they're completely ostracized from the community, which I think that there are very rare instances when people should be like exiled from a community, and I would love to have a way to be able to have this conversation constructively as a community, and to know like how do you respond when someone's like, "No, I'm not willing to do that," or "You're the crazy one," or like
Yeah.
F or
Absolutely. I live a big part of my adult life in community in Berkeley for 9 years, here in Elizabeth for another number of years. And there was something very interesting that I observed there that I think is pertinent here. And it's like when two people will get into a conflict, like a disagreement of perceptions, if they couldn't solve it there or with a mediator, we will bring it to the group. Okay. We're like 8, 9 people. And in the group, definitively all the conflicts would get resolved, because it is one thing that just one person mirror you some potentially like distorted or maybe even destructive tendency in your life. You can like say, no, you are the crazy one, you can get defensive. But when it's not just one person, but 2, 3, 4, 5 people in your community, that has always a different impact. So I would say that has like a power that any individual conversation um, cannot have, especially if the person is resistant to see the issues. But I totally agree with you. This is not never about canceling anyone. It's not about exiling people in the community. It's about really like mirroring things to support them and helping to grow even further in that path that they are at, and to be able to live it like with greater freedom and also with more harmonious relationships with the community. So that's the framework. And I would say that if you frame it in these positive terms, and if necessary, you have not just one person, but other few people that see the same thing, mirroring that has tremendous power.
No, thank you for that perspective and that point of view, because I think for me, that's really refreshing to hear that is possible to be able to have those conversations, because I do think that oftentimes we do get stuck in those individual conversations and we're like, oh, this person's too stubborn, or they're not willing, or something like that. And to broaden that out to your group, whether that be like your polycule or your support network or something like that, where it is those like 5, 6, 8, 9 people that are having this like conversation with this person. I really appreciate that, offering that perspective and that point of view, because I think that this is a really important thing to address, especially when we have this tendency to just like cancel people and shut people out, people down. So I really, really appreciate that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So what else do you see and this has to be my last question because we're coming to time. I could talk to you about this for the rest of the day. But what do you see is possible when people are able to have this ability to walk this path of relational freedom? What's possible for people?
I think that on the one hand, we can really be who we are with different people in different moments of life. Like in my own trajectory, I was polyamorous for 10 years, probably even more, and then I was monogamous, and now I feel I can be both. It's a greater freedom there. There is like a more freedom to be engaging with a variety of persons, who have different dispositions, Sometimes when many people who are poly, sometimes we fall in love with monogamous people, and then that's game over, because it's not gonna work unless, it's someone, a very evolved monogamous people who is willing to enter into what's called a monopoly relationship, in which one is monogamous and the other polyamorous, right? But when you have that freedom, then you can really engage with a greater number of people, and also to be more also compassionate with yourself and the others, because you realize that things can change. It's really like to understand that we are evolving all the time, that our needs can change like from time to time, but also that we hold inside of us a diversity of voices. I know many people who are like very almost in their beliefs and in their love, in their hearts, but sexually, of course, they are very poly. That's very common, right? They want a diversity of lovers. Who doesn't ultimately, right? Because, right? But these other people who are, they believe in polyamory, they really believe as a philosophy. I have clients like that. I know polyamorous activists like that. But when they sexually mate with someone, they realize that they can only be sexual with one person. So I think it really opened this whole spectrum of possibilities when you are able to be like more fluid and different relationship styles. But also you get free from all these kind of polyphobias, monophobias, all these kind of, I call it the monopoly wars in my book, like this kind of predicament of mutual judgment or condescension between monogamies and polyamories that I felt very sad. Poly people critique mono, they're hypocritical, they're like patriarchal, this is like something from the past, and poly critique mono, and mono people critique the poly people, like they're hedonists, they don't understand what true love is, and they normally have the same judgments. Like also mono tells poly, you don't understand what true love is, right? If you find your true love for your twin flame, you'll become monogamous, right? The poly tells more, you haven't really tapped into the non-possessive, free spiritual essence of love, for example. So it's like this, all these things, like they call each other patriarchal, they call each other that they're addicted, they're obsessed with sex as well, and goes both camps. And for me, this is very sad, and also these kind of phobias can also be internalized within ourselves, internalized polyphobia or internalized monophobia. It kind of like leads to not harmonious and fulfilling relationships with people with different walks of life, but also can lead to different inner struggles. So once you liberate yourselves from all these, I want to say it, stupid judgments, because as we said before, you can be monogamous or polyamorous in more or less mature ways, or less mindful ways, more aware of social oppression than others. So it's not one style better than the others in general terms, like. But definitively, you can be discerning about how you are living your relational style, how others are doing the same. So I would say it's like, a lot of exploration and a lot of liberation that can come with this exploration for both monogamous people and polyamorous people.
Yeah, beautiful. I really hope that everybody just soaks all of this whole interview up, because I really also believe in what you're saying as well. Like, it's not about being monogamous per se or polyamorous necessarily, but it's really about the mindfulness that you bring to it and your discernment and your ability to grow and evolve individually and as a community together. Thank you so much for sharing today and for being here. My last couple of questions are, if people got nothing else out of this chat, if they only got one thing, what is the one thing you hope that they got?
I would say it's like, live your truth, and don't be afraid of making mistakes. As we talk, we're all beginners as we're exploring these new relational territories. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fuck up. It's totally okay, because we need to be compassionate with ourselves and others, our partners too, when they make mistakes. Here, there is a lot of rules and regulations, both in monogamy and in polyamory too, of course. And I think it's important that we give one another like leeway and a lot of compassion and the support to grow. So speak your truth, be yourself, and if you're mistaken, life is gonna tell you for sure.
Oh my, that is a great quote. If you are mistaken, life is going to tell you for sure.
Sooner or later.
Absolutely. As my mom thing comes down the pipeline. Oh my God. Beautiful. And what's something that someone could do today to live this more fully?
I would say like, that's a great question. You got me like off guard here, completely. But I would say, I don't know, like something super simple, like tell more than one people in your networks that you love them and see how you feel and how they feel and dare to express your love, because there is something about this mononormative thing that is very sad for me, is that it can repress the expression of love, if every single time I go to a place in nature and I say I love this place, I need to build my house there, at some point I will start not saying it because that's a lot. I don't want to build a house everywhere. So I think it's really good to be able to express our loves, regardless if you are monogamous or polyamorous, and also to start exploring like how it feels to express that love that could be of very different types. Again, it's so important that other people will talk about this. Polyamory is not just about sex, it's about romantic love and affection and many spiritual love, many other things. So express your love from more than one people today and see how it feels to you and how it's received by others.
Beautiful. Thank you. And where can people find you?
I have a professional website. It's like Jorge and Ferrer. I don't know. I need to spell this out. Maybe you.
It'll be in the show notes below. So
Okay,
it'll
excellent.
be,
Wonderful.
yeah. So everyone who wants right now, just scroll down the professional.
Get me off the hook to having to spell all that. So my personal website that you can find both a description of my counseling services, also links to my books, links to courses and TED Talk, and everything is there. So yes, that's where people can find me.
Yeah, beautiful. Excellent. Jorge, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and expertise and wisdom. And it's just been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much to you for the invitation. And I thank you everybody who is taking this amazing program. I think it's on a rock.